This is Chris Froome's Pinarello Bolide time trial bike, a model which we first saw used by Bradley Wiggins back at the 2013 Giro d'Italia. It has seen a few changes since then, and there's some really cool bits on Chris Froome's personal time trial bike here, which we'll be using shortly at the Vuelta. Now, we're going to start here at the back. All Team Sky riders use Fizik saddles, and Chris Froome used the Tritone here for his time trials. As the name suggests, it's aimed primarily towards triathletes, but we see more and more pro riders using a saddle like this with the fat nose at the front so that they can get right forward on their TT bike and still be relatively comfortable. Another sponsor of Team Sky is Shimano, so as you would expect, it's got the Dura-Ace Di2 time trial group set throughout, but the size of the cassette is interesting. Now, we know that Chris Froome does like to spin a lot, so he's got an 11 tooth when he's going really fast, all the way up to 28. Now, one slight skirmish away from that Dura-Ace group set are the chain rings. This is something that we've seen Chris Froome use now for the last few years. They're the Osymetric chain rings, and although they're not marked here, I have just counted the teeth, and he's got a 54 here as the big ring and a 42 tooth there as the small ring. But as we've also explained in the past, that 54 actually feels more like a 58 when you're actually pushing down on the downstroke, and it goes very quickly through the bottom of the stroke so that you're starting the next push down with your other leg. So let's have a look at a few of the key differences with this bike. So we've got the Pro Disc tubular rear wheel here and the Pro Disc tri-spoke wheel there at the front, and they are both, and in particular the front one, is super wide as a wheel, but the tyres are actually quite narrow. Now, we have seen a tendency recently for manufacturers of both wheels and tyres to go slightly wider. Apparently the rolling resistance is better, but also the aerodynamic qualities as well. But that makes it interesting that he's still using quite a narrow 22mm tyre here at the back, and in particular at the front. If you take a look at that down, the wheel is actually quite a lot wider than the tyre itself, which is something that I haven't actually seen myself before. Now, if we go here towards the front, this is one of the best bits for me of the bike. So these are the tri-bars, the aero bars, but these ones are 3D printed. So this is kind of the next part on from where British Cycling made them for their track riders. Pinarello have actually developed these using Chris Froome himself. They've managed to take a 3D scan and then make these 3D bars that actually perfectly sit underneath his forearm, so he can actually rest them here at the front. So I've actually not seen a shape quite like this before. They've got what is fairly standard now for a lot of riders, this kind of grip tape, more like sandpaper, that stops them slipping, both here on the bars at the bottom and also here up on the end of the tri-bars. But you can see they're a pretty unique design. They've even gone so far as to make a part of this extension round so that it can put the Garmin mount on top here without any problems at all. Another interesting thing on this bike are the rear dropouts. Now, they're not really dropouts like you would get on a road bike where they're vertical, they're actually horizontal facing, and what that allows the mechanics to do is make sure that they can perfectly place this rear disc wheel behind the aerodynamic seat tube here, depending on the size of the tyre. Now, if you look down here, you'll also notice team sponsor Stages. That is who provides the power meters for Team Sky and Chris Froome, even on the time trial bikes. And also, take a look down here at the chain, that has been meticulously prepared. So Team Sky have done quite a lot of investigating into what makes an efficient chain. It is quite surprising how much difference it can make. So a really worn out chain can actually increase what you have to do by around 10 watts versus a new chain with the right lubrication. So they've also worked with their sponsors Muc-Off on this. It's called aerodynamic. And although they don't have the time to meticulously put a little drop on each and every chain link the majority of the time, that is something that they will do on Chris Froome's time trial bike and some of the other top riders if it's going to be really, really important. Now, one of the other really cool things about the Bolide frame are the kind of integrated brakes. They just look so slick, and they just basically look fast, which is what you want when you're doing a time trial. But if you take a closer look at the brake blocks just down here, you'll see that the mechanics have had to file down the brake blocks in order to fit this super wide Pro tri-spoke front wheel in. So there's a lot less rubber on them basically than there are on the rear ones. I think they had basically no choice if they wanted to manage to get this wheel in. Now, the moment of truth then. How much does this bike weigh? Right, well, I've done some measurements, and as you saw, it is quite hefty in terms of its weight, around about 8.5 kilos. I don't mind admitting, I almost had to use 2 arms to pick that up. But that's the price you pay for trying to get aerodynamic. As you can see, it is quite a chunky looking bike, and there's plenty of extra carbon up there in order to make it super fast when they're going through the wind at 55 k's per hour or whatever it is. Now I've also taken some other measurements, including his saddle height. So he's running around about an 80 centimetre saddle height, measured towards the front of the saddle, which is roughly where I think he'll be sitting throughout the majority of his time trials. So there you have it. It's an interesting looking bike, certainly goes very fast, at least when it's ridden by Chris Froome. And I have to say, I really like the look of it. Now, if you would like to see the full playlist of all of the pro bikes which we've taken a close look at, you can find that by clicking just up there somewhere. And if you would like to see the bike which Chris Froome uses for training around his home near Monaco, we've also got that for you, and it's kind of down there. And finally, if you would like to subscribe to GCN and get all this content delivered to your inbox for free, never miss anything, all you've got to do is click on, I reckon the 3D bars was to do for the subscribers this time. They are cool, I must admit.